everyone, and welcome once again to Caleb Likes Books. Today I'm doing my New Year's Q&A video. For those who don't know or may have missed it or whatever, I think it was my end of the year update for 2024, I said that I wanted to do a Q&A to celebrate the new year. And some people left a few questions, and so that's what I'm going to be doing in this video. And I have quite a few questions to get through, so I'm just going to kind of jump into this. But I always enjoy doing like Q&A type videos and stuff. I've only done one on the channel before, but I've done a few others on past YouTube channels. I always enjoy them, so I thought this would be fun. So I had 3 people leave questions. 2 of those people left one question each, so I'll read those ones first. And then one person left several different questions, so I'll go through that one last. So first, from Lisa, she said that she is interested in checking out some horror and knows that I'm a fan of H.P. Lovecraft and wanted to know what I recommend as good starter books. So this one, I actually, some time ago now, I actually did a video about, I think it was 5 books that I recommend, or 5 stories, not books, because he did short stories and stuff. But 5 short stories that I recommend as starters, so I'd recommend watching that video. But as far as kind of off the top of my head, I would say Color Out of Space is a good starter. Call of Cthulhu, Dagon is one of the shorter ones. I think it's only like 10 pages. That's a good one to start with as well. Shadow over Innsmouth is a really good starter. Let's see, Dunwich Horror probably is a good starter as well. I think those mostly are the ones that I mentioned in that video. There's a lot of other good ones that I think would make for good starters. I think those ones, especially if you're interested in like the Cthulhu mythos, like cosmic horror type stuff, if you're interested in more kind of traditional horror, then The Rats in the Walls would be a good one. Herbert West Reanimator would be a good one. And a few other ones as well would be some good starters, but those are like a few. If you enjoy those and are interested in something longer, then I would recommend At the Mountains of Madness, as well as the Randolph Carter stories as well, which includes like Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath, which is actually a novella, so that one's a bit longer. But at the very least, I would say Dagon, Call of Cthulhu, Shadow over Innsmouth, and Color Out of Space would be like, if I were to pick just a handful, those would be the ones that I would most recommend. Next question comes from Mark, who asks about book cover art, wants to know my thoughts on different book cover art, what I like, some of my favorites, and how it kind of impacts the reading experience and things like that. I myself have been involved in art in the past. I got my college degree actually in digital art, which I have since not used extensively, but would like to get back into. I've always been very art focused across my life, and so I really enjoy book cover art especially. What I tend to look for, I tend to be more of a fan of like some stuff I'm not really so much into is a lot of the very text-based type stuff. There's some that's okay, like if it has an interesting design going on with it or interesting use of color or things like that maybe. But I tend to really enjoy some of the more like minimalist style type stuff that's coming out a lot nowadays. I also enjoy some of like the full painting style. Kind of depends when it comes to that. Like I tend to not be a huge fan of like the classic fantasy painted style for some reason, although I enjoy some of the newer stuff. Just a little bit more. Something about the older style just doesn't always click for me for some reason. I really enjoy covers oftentimes that kind of give a good sense of like atmosphere and kind of the feel of the book quite a lot. So some of my favorites would include, like, I love all the Stormlight Archive covers, although my favorite one is probably Wind and Truth. I just really like the colors on that one. I really like the composition and just the landscape and stuff. I really like The Fisherman by John Langan, which is also a favorite book of mine. That one is actually a painting that was done like several years ago that was just used for the cover. I forget the name of the painting, but that one is like, it's not depicting anything from the book, but it fits really well. Like the vibe of it fits the type of story very well. It's got that kind of dark, like very kind of dark feel to it, but it also has that kind of stormy, like sea kind of thing going on, which fits. I also really like another kind of horror book I really like is Ballad of Black Tom by Victor Laval. I think that has a great cover. A lot of Star Wars books I really like. I love my favorite Star Wars cover is hard to say, but if I had to like pick one off the top of my head, I love the special edition of The Fallen Star. With the Jedi standing in the foreground with Starlight Beacon in the background. I love that cover. I think fits the tone of the book very well, and it's just a great piece of art. The cover in general doesn't impact the reading experience for me too much, although it does impact which edition of a book I will buy. Typically, if I see a book, like if it's a book that I'm not like dying to get right that moment, and I see a cover and I'm like, oh, I don't really like that cover, then I will typically skip it. And sometimes I will seek out particular covers for books if I can get them, and things like that. So, for example, I don't currently own the A Song of Ice and Fire series by George Martin. I have read them before, but I borrowed them, and that's how I read them. So if I ever do buy them, the version that I would actually want to get is the new paperback covers, because even though the previous covers are very iconic, and those are the ones that were on the versions I read the hardcovers. I really like the new artwork, so I wouldn't like go out of my way to buy them if I found something with the old artwork, but if I did find it with the new artwork, then I would be more interested, I guess, and things like that. Like there's other ones like something like Pet Sematary by Stephen King. I've seen that before used, and I was like, oh, I could get it, but I really don't like the cover. So eventually, I recently got it with a cover that I do like. It's not my favorite cover for that book, but I certainly prefer it over the one that I had seen in the past. So the cover doesn't impact much of the reading experience for me, but it does impact like which version of a book that I will get and the likelihood that I will pick it up. And I think, people say not to judge a book too harshly by its cover, which makes sense, but I think that the cover is a big part of like getting people's attention for the book. So I think it is a very important thing for sure. So I've kind of spent a lot of time on this question, so I'll move along, but that's kind of my answer for that one. And lastly, we have a whole bunch of questions from Jack. So I will kind of try to go through these a little quickly as well, just to not take too much time. So the first question is, how did I get into reading? I get into reading as a kid. I loved reading as a kid. Read a lot of, I loved Chronicles of Narnia. I loved Del Toro Quest, Magic Treehouse, a few other ones, Diary of a Wimpy Kid, probably some other ones as well that I'm forgetting, but I loved a lot of that stuff. I read some Star Wars books here and there as well, and then in high school I picked up a few more Star Wars books like the Jedi Academy trilogy, some of the Old Republic books, things like that. And then in kind of late high school, I kind of fell out of reading just because I picked up like a lot of other hobbies. I was into like video games and started writing music around that time, so I spent a lot of my time doing that. And just other stuff, it kind of fell by the wayside. So I got back into reading in 2021 with the Star Wars The High Republic series. I was starting a new job where I was going to have a lot of downtime, and so Light of the Jedi had just come out, or was about to come out, I can't remember. But I was like, well, I need something to fill the downtime at my job. And so I picked up Light of the Jedi, and things just kind of went from there. So that's how I got into reading. He also asked what are some series that I'm excited or nervous to get into. And for this, there's so many. As far as a series that I'm excited to get into, I mean, there's like a million of them. As far as ones that I already have and things like that, I'm excited to get back into The Witcher, excited to get back into Wheel of Time. Hopefully I will enjoy those books. I've already read some of them, but hopefully I can enjoy getting back into those. I'm very excited to read some of the Star Wars series that I still need to go through, like Legacy of the Force, and eventually Fate of the Jedi. Some of the canon stuff as well I'm excited to do, like I recently got the Aftermath trilogy. I'm excited to read those. All kinds of Star Wars books. I hope to read at least every adult Star Wars book eventually. I really want to catch up on Legends, and I want to get as caught up on the canon as I can, so I'm very excited to read all of that stuff. I'm excited to continue the Bloodsworn saga by John Gwynne. I also really want to read his Faithful and the Fallen series eventually. I really want to read Dark Tower by Stephen King eventually. I really want to read Lightbringer by Brent Weeks. Sun Eater by Christopher Rocchio is one that I'm very interested in. I really want to read the first Law books by Joe Abercrombie. I could keep going. There's so many that I'm excited to read. If I were to continue listing them, I'm sure that we would be here for a while, so I'm going to stop there. As far as something I'm nervous to read, I'm a little nervous to read like Dark Tower, just because I've heard it's really weird, and also the ending's pretty controversial, so I'm kind of nervous about how I feel about that. But I am excited to read that one as well. There's not really any series that I'm particularly nervous to read. There's some that are like a little outside my norm that I'm a little nervous about, like kind of a hint for February. I'm actually not sure when this video is coming out, but if I haven't put out my February TBR yet, I'm planning to read 50 Shades of Grey in February, so I'm a little nervous about that because that is way outside my norm. And similarly, I also would like to read Fourth Wing in that series sometime, Court of Thorns and Roses. Some of that stuff's very outside my norm, so I'm a little nervous to read that, but you know, I'll give it a try maybe. So I guess that answers that question. Next question is, have I read Perks of Being a Wallflower? I have heard of it, but I've never read it, but you know, I'm open to it someday. Next question after that is my favorite adaptation of a book or series. This one's a little tough. I think Lord of the Rings like has to be the best one. Like, I love the books and I love the movies. I've only seen the movies once. I need to watch them again, but I love the movies. Funny story with the movies, actually. I watched the movies first, and my wife watched them with me because she loved them as a kid. And we watched Fellowship of the Ring one night, and then the next night we we watched Two Towers, and we were like planning to do one each night. And we got through Two Towers, and it was like 1 a.m. And I was like, I need to watch Return of the King like right now. We need to do that. So we were up until like 3 or 4 in the morning, but it was time well spent. But I also love the first Narnia movie from Disney. That, even though you know, it adds a lot to the book, you know, but I think it is a great adaptation. Like, it gets the feel right and everything, and it's a great movie. It's a movie that I love dearly, very like nostalgic for me. I loved it as a kid. The other two Narnia movies that came out in that particular adaptation were also good. I enjoyed those, but first one's definitely my favorite. I've also seen some of the old ones, the BBC movies, but that one as well. If I were to pick like a personal, like very subjective, like nostalgic favorite, that would be the one I'd go for. I also love the Harry Potter movies, although I haven't really read much of the books. But I do love the Harry Potter movies as well. The next question is, would I be open to doing some live streams in the future? I've done a couple, but not very many. I don't have many opportunities to do them, but if I ever am able to do them, I would love to. I used to do some live streams on one of my old channels that I had, and I always enjoyed that. I'd love to, I really like being able to interact with my audience, like people leaving comments and things, or just talking to people in general about this stuff, because I don't really have a lot of people in my real life that are into like these kinds of books and things, so I love to be able to talk to people about that. So I definitely would be open to doing live streams in the future. It's just depending on whether or not I can. Next one is if I would be open to reading comics and manga in the future. I would. The problem with manga and comics is that it is just so expensive for the amount of time you get out of it. And I know like that's maybe not necessarily like, you shouldn't always judge something's value based on like the price to time ratio. But I just think like if I get like a comic or a manga or whatever for like $15, $20, and I only spend maybe a couple hours reading it, I could get a book, like a novel, for $10, and I would get so much more time out of it. So that's kind of the main thing. If I eventually become just rolling in money and I can spend all the money I want on comics and manga, then I definitely would be open to it. Maybe I'll read digital comics or something like that. Maybe that would be a little bit more manageable. But it's mostly just due to the price. I just can't justify it a lot of the time, but I would like to. There's some manga I'm interested in. I'm interested in like Berserk. I've heard that one's good. I also really want to read some of the Star Wars comics. I want to read the Bloodborne comics, a few other ones. Comics also, just as a medium, tend to not work for me as well as books. For some reason, I'm not sure why. But I would be open to trying more of them in the future. Next is favorite genres and subgenres. Obviously I love fantasy. I'd say most of what I read is like epic fantasy type stuff, but I enjoy, I'm sure I would enjoy some other stuff. Just haven't read a whole lot of other stuff really. But that is kind of my main thing aside from like Star Wars. I really enjoy horror, especially like cosmic horror, Lovecraftian horror type stuff. Enjoy sci-fi. There's other genres that I'm interested in, but I haven't looked into too much. But that's kind of my main thing. Next question is if I listen to music while I read. I never listen to music while I read. I did it once when I was rereading Narnia. I listened to the movie soundtrack a bit. It's not even necessarily because it like distracts me or anything. It's just not something I do. And sometimes it can be distracting for me if the music doesn't match the book. Like if I'm reading like a super calm like character dialogue scene and I'm listening to some like bombastic like orchestral music or something, then it doesn't fit and it kind of distracts me. I would be open to doing something like that, but I just never really do. And then the next question is if I only read print books or if I also read audiobooks and ebooks. I do read some ebooks. Most of the ebooks that I read are self-published books, because first of all, self-published, getting them in print sometimes can just be a little expensive, and there tend to be a lot of ebooks for free on Kindle that are self-published or cheap ones and stuff like that. So a lot of my self-published books I've gotten on Kindle. So I do read not a huge amount of ebooks, but a decent amount. I do audiobooks occasionally. I don't I don't have like Audible or anything, but there are some books that I will read where I can find audiobooks for them on YouTube, for example, like fan-made audiobooks or things like that. I don't do that if I don't already own the book, though. The only time I will do that is if I already own the print book, and if I'm like working or something, I can listen to it just to get a little extra reading time in. But otherwise, I don't really do audio. So I would say 85% of my reading is physical books, and then probably like 10 or 12% is ebooks, and then like the last couple percent is audiobooks. So that's kind of what I would imagine the breakup for that is. Next question is one of my favorite authors. My favorite, I would say, is Brandon Sanderson. I love all his stuff that I've read. I also really like J.R.R. Tolkien, H.P. Lovecraft. As far as like some Star Wars authors, I love Claudia Gray. I love everything she's done. I enjoy Timothy Zahn. I enjoy some of Drew Karpyshyn's Star Wars stuff. Joe Schreiber's 3 Star Wars EU books. I really loved all 3 of those. There's some other ones I'm sure. I enjoy like Will White. I read his Elder Empire series and I thought it was pretty good. But those I would say are mostly my favorites. I would say my big favorites for me are Brandon Sanderson, Tolkien, and Lovecraft. Next one is my favorite era of Star Wars. In Legends, it is the Old Republic. I love the Knights of the Old Republic video games, and I love that era in general, the history of it and everything. So that's my favorite in Legends. In terms of canon, I really like the High Republic. As far as stuff that's presented in like the movies and shows and stuff, I'd say my favorite's probably the Clone Wars era. Like the prequel era in general, I think is really interesting. A lot of interesting stuff going on there. The next question is if I'm into Star Trek. I have seen Wrath of Khan as a kid, which I didn't like as a kid because I thought it was boring. So maybe I'd like that more if I watched it again. And I have also seen the new trilogy, the J.J. Abrams, and I think some other people did the third one. But it's the Star Trek Into Darkness, and Star Trek Beyond trilogy, which I did enjoy those 3. And I've also played a bit of Star Trek Online, but otherwise I've never gotten into Star Trek. I'd love to. I think it would be super cool, but I've just never done it. But maybe someday. Next question is, do I like sports? Not particularly. I enjoy playing them, casually with like a... I enjoy just like, if I'm at camp, which is apparently a Maine only thing, which I really don't understand because it's awesome and more people should do it. But if I'm like with family doing something like that, I enjoy like, throwing football with my cousins, or we've played like badminton or volleyball. I enjoy that stuff. But as far as like watching sports, don't really care for it. I enjoy it if I'm actually physically at the game. Like I've in high school, I went to some like football games and basketball games because I played in the band, and I enjoyed that. I've been to a couple baseball games, so I enjoy it if I'm actually there, but otherwise don't really care for sports. The next question is what kind of music I like. I am really big into metal music. I also enjoy some rock, some orchestral stuff, but the vast majority of what I listen to is metal. I enjoy most styles of metal, though my favorites would probably be I really like metalcore. I really enjoy deathcore, especially modern deathcore, like a lot of the newer bands that are coming out in that. I enjoy black metal. I enjoy power metal. Just all most genres of metal I enjoy. And then he also asked for my favorite artists and albums, which is also a long list. I think on Spotify I follow like over 300 artists, so I have a lot that I like. But off the top of my head, I'd say my favorites include Red, Orbit Culture, Twilight Force, As I Lay Dying, Demon Hunter, Lorna Shore, Mental Cruelty. I could go on. There's like a million of them. Iron Maiden. There's too many. I could just go on for forever. Insomnium is another one that I really like. As far as like favorite albums, Insomnium's Winter's Gate is arguably my favorite album, alongside Red's Of Beauty and Rage. I would say if I were to pick an all-time favorite album, it would be one of those two. So I could just list like a million bands, but I'm going to stop there because I don't want to take too much time doing that. Next question is, has a book series ever made you cry? A few times. Brandon Sanderson at several points has made me cry, especially in Stormlight Archive, but also once or twice in Mistborn, I would say. Also, the New Jedi Order series made me cry once or twice. I haven't cried that much reading books, but it has happened from time to time. Next one is if there are any other tie-in books that I'd like to get into. Yes, I want to read more Assassin's Creed books. I would love to get into some for franchises that I am like slightly familiar with, but not that into. Like I'd be interested in like checking out Warhammer, Warcraft. I'd like to check out the Halo books. A lot of other ones as well. I'm open to most things out there. I'd love to read some of the Transformers books, but those are apparently quite hard to find. Same with Indiana Jones. So there's several other ones out there that I'd be interested in, but it just kind of depends on what I can get my hands on. This question is if I'm a hot weather or cold weather person. I am much more a cold weather person. I don't mind hot weather. I don't mind summer, but I live in Maine, and it's not uncommon for it to be rather cold around here most of the year. So I'm happy like 50, 60 degrees Fahrenheit outside. That's about like my sweet spot, which is, I wouldn't even say that's cold, but some people probably would if you live kind of southern United States maybe. But I'm definitely more of a cold weather person. I can handle up to like 80 degrees comfortably. Anything above that, and I just wish it were cooler. So definitely more of a cold weather person. Then we have my favorite book cover, which there's a lot of them. I mentioned a few of them earlier with another question. If I were to go with like my gut answer, I really like Wind and Truth by Brandon Sanderson, as well as The Way of Kings. I really like the covers for both of those. And I also mentioned The Fisherman and Ballad of Black Tom. Those are also a couple of my favorites. There's a lot. There's too many for me to even think of unless I have them right in front of me. But those are a few. And then favorite book cover artist. I really like the stuff that his name's not coming to me, but the guy who did the cover for the Silverblood Promise, and he's done some other work with Broken Binding for like Malazan and stuff. It's not coming to me. If I think of it while I'm editing this, I'll put his name on the screen. But I love his stuff. He is an amazing artist. And there's also, not a book cover artist, but one of my favorite other artists, just because I feel like mentioning this. I also really like Mariusz Lewandowski. I don't know if I'm saying his name right. He unfortunately passed away a few years ago, but his art is amazing. He did a lot of metal album covers that I really like. And another metal album cover artist that I love is Kalen Stuckermans. I don't know if I'm saying his name right either, but he's done a lot of work that I really like. He actually did the artwork on this shirt that I'm wearing, as well as several other ones that I love. Then we have favorite movies and TV shows. Obviously, I love Star Wars. I love the Star Wars movies and shows in general. My favorites being, for the movies, I would say my top 3 favorite movies are Empire Strikes Back, A New Hope, and Revenge of the Sith. And then as far as the TV shows, controversially, I would say Acolyte, which I know is not necessarily the most popular opinion, but I love The Acolyte. Andor and probably Mandalorian, I would say, is my third favorite. I haven't seen as many of the animated shows, but I do enjoy the live action ones, and I'd like to get more into the animated shows. I just haven't done it. Some other favorite movies, I love some of the MCU movies. I haven't seen any of them since the second Spider-Man movie. But I do love some of the old ones like the Iron Man and the Avengers movies and things like that. I also love the Sam Raimi Spider-Man trilogy as well, kind of talking superheroes, as well as the Dark Knight trilogy. I love Indiana Jones. My favorite one of those is probably Last Crusade. I love the Lego movie. That is just one of my absolute favorite movies as well. And there's a lot of them. I don't watch a ton of movies, but those are some of my favorites. As far as other TV shows, I really like Criminal Minds. My wife and I watch that together quite a lot. So I'd say that's probably my favorite TV show at the moment. And I don't watch a lot of shows either, but that one's probably my favorite. Next is, do I have any pets? I have several. We used to have a lot of animals. Right now we have a dog and 4 or 5 cats. I think 5 cats, although a couple of them are technically not ours. They belong to my wife's sister and mother. So 2 of them are not technically ours, but we have, I think, 5 cats in the house as well as a dog. We used to have like 16 cats because 2 of them had kittens, and they had 5 each, so we had a lot of cats. And we also had 2 dogs at one point, neither of which is the one we currently have. We had to unfortunately give the other 2 to some other people because we just couldn't keep up with them. They were bigger dogs and we just couldn't give them like the exercise and treatment that they really deserved. But now we have like a smaller dog, which is kind of more manageable for us. We also used to have several mice and hamsters, a couple dwarf hamsters. We used to have a couple snakes, but we don't have any of those anymore. Just had to cut it down on the animals because not only was it taking up a lot of space and a lot of time and management and everything, but also like having that many animals is kind of expensive. Yeah, but we love animals. We'd love to have more, but just can't right now. Even the amount that we have is arguably too many, but we love them, so we're keeping them, I guess. Then he also asked if I'd be open to having a PO box in the future, as well as doing things like Patreon and YouTube memberships. I would be open to any of that stuff. I just don't think right now is maybe a good time. I don't think I'm like big enough of a channel to really justify doing something like that, but in the future I definitely would be interested in it. If I ever get to be, a few thousand subscribers or something, maybe I'd consider things like that. But right now I just think the channel's too small to really feasibly do something like that, but definitely in the future is something I'd like to keep in mind. And then his last question is my favorite booktubers and my favorite YouTubers outside of books. Kind of similar to music, I watch a lot of YouTubers, so it's kind of hard for me to narrow down. As far as booktubers, I love Daniel Green, obviously, like most booktubers seem to like Daniel Green. Jonathan Cohn also is a good friend of mine, and I really enjoy his channel. The Book Guy I really like. I really like Captured in Words. Oh goodness, there's too many. Philip Chase, Mike's Book Reviews, Matt's Fantasy Book Reviews, Murphy Napier. There's a lot of them I really enjoy, but those are a few. As far as other YouTubers, there's a lot of them I really enjoy. Nerdcubed, Lore Runner, a lot of like gaming critique channels like I really enjoy. White Light and That Boy Aqua. Oh goodness, there's so many. There's some music YouTubers that I like, Tank the Tech and Nick Nocturnal, Metal Trenches. There's so many, but those are a handful that I really like as well. So that pretty much wraps up this Q&A. Quite a lot of questions here, especially towards the end, but I thought this would be fun to do, and I thought it'd be something where you guys could kind of get to know me a little bit better, and something fun to do here on the channel occasionally. I'd like to do more of these in the future, but probably not, all the time or anything, but I'm sure every once in a while I'll probably want to do some of these because I think they're fun. So that is pretty much it for this video. Of course, with this being a New Year's Q&A, I hope you all have a wonderful New Year. I know this video is coming out a little bit after the beginning of the year, but whatever. It's still the beginning of the year. So I hope you all have a wonderful New Year and all that kind of thing. So that's pretty much it for this video. So thank you all for watching, and I will see you all next time.